Hazel and the cat are fighting, which is excellent to be happening right now. So we'll see if they just calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
Hazel, leave the cat alone. Oh, Ed's pissed. Hazel and the cat are fighting, which is excellent. Alright, well, sound check worked. Just fine. That's good. How is everybody? We're technically live.
Okay.
Not a lot of preamble there, but I'm busy trying to have my animals not kill each other. That would be ideal.
That is ideal.
Yeah, so my usual intro and memes and shenanigans I usually do. Hello, everyone. We are doing a Tomb Kings interview with Mr. Flying Taco. You might know him from the 2021 film Kong vs. Godzilla. He played Godzilla. It's amazing what they can do with makeup these days. How you doing, Mr. Taco?
Pretty good. You know, that was a good film.
It was. You were excellent. I am sure you won. I have definitely seen it. He said.
Of course I did. What type of question?
E. All right. So you are very here, very ready to do this, and nothing is going on in the background.
No. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's do this. For anybody who's watching this in post, the new patch like literally just came out, and now there's a million tournaments going on, and like Turn's streaming right now, Robane's streaming right now, like everybody's streaming. So Taco and I planning this like 5 days in advance did us more harm than good. Ugh.
Oh, it's fine. There's not going to be any problems. Everyone's going to watch the VOD anyway.
Got it. All right. First question that I always ask, though TN also asked it this time. What are the best and worst 3 matchups? Like if you had 3 bans, what would you ban? Or what are your 3 favorite things to see? As a Tomb Kings player.
So worst, number 1 is probably Vampire Counts, at least versus Vampire Counts players that really know the matchup. Like you can still win versus Vampire Counts players that don't know the matchup fairly easily, but Vampire Counts players who know what they're doing are probably the biggest threat. Chaos, I would say, and then Dwarves. I'd say those are the big 3. So Counts, Chaos, Dwarves. Those are the ones I like to ban the most. The ones I like to see, Wood Elves, I like to see. Dark Elves are like, okay, High Elves are... I like to see High Elves personally, but it's not like great. Tomb Kings. Skaven are, I'd say are pretty good, but it's nothing like crazy. Like, Tomb Kings don't really dominate anywhere anymore. Like Greenskins and Beastmen, they used to somewhat dominate a long time ago, like on Tomb Kings release. They don't really dominate there anymore. Bretonnia is like somewhat even. Dark Elves, I'd say Tomb King have an advantage, but it's not by much. Empire, I'd say is map dependent, but never Tomb King favored. Lizardmen, Lizardmen is fairly decent, but some maps can make it somewhat annoying, but I'd say Lizardmen is one you want as Tomb Kings. Lizardmen and Wood Elves. Norska's not too bad. Coast is okay. Yeah, I'll leave that for the matchups because I could go in depth about each matchup if I need, but as like a general overview of what's good and bad, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, the Lizardman one I hear from both sides, like, oh, I like it, oh, I hate it. Personally, whenever I play Lizardman to Tomb Kings, it feels pretty nice. So maybe I'm just not playing the right Tomb Kings players, but...
It's not, like, easy for Tomb Kings. Like, a lot of Tomb King players also just get swarmed by mass infantry, and they don't really know how to deal with it. I don't really think that's a big issue for Tomb Kings, mainly because the Lizardman infantry's rather low armor and somewhat squishy, and Tomb Guard trade really effectively with it, and they don't have Burning Head, so you can have like a small elite core but not too elite, and then have your triple Ushapti Great Bows, which, well, normally I do 2, but with Oracle Kite builds coming into the meta, I think 3 is now necessary again. But Lizardman Rush is always has a good chance. But I think, especially on a big map, actually on a big map, Tomb Kings actually fare a little bit better because well, maybe medium-sized maps. There's a lot of different maps where you could make different arguments because you want to be able to kite with great bows a little bit, but you also want them to come at you. You don't want to have to push towards them because your infantry is so slow. So if it's like a massive map, like MP Crossroads or whatever, if they have a full kite build with like Oracle Stegodon, and then they'll outrange your Ushapti with the Stegodon and kite back, and then you have to try and shoot the Oracle, and then with your great bows, then the Oracle starts to dodge. It can make it a little interesting, but there's counterplay still.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's even to slightly Tomb King favored. Like, I wouldn't like recommend it unless you practice it.
Gotcha. I personally, as a Lizardman, I like a Saurus Rush with bestowed on with a Res Crystal. I personally think that's pretty fun. But
yeah, Saurus Rushes are always fun.
Yeah, maybe I'm just a boring type of player.
I honestly, I actually enjoy infantry rushes, even though they can be like boring play wise. I just like the models a lot. Like Saurus looks so cool, so I'm always happy to see them.
Yeah, dude. I messaged Alfredino last night or 2 nights ago, but I just caught up on Turn's Legendary Lord tournament, and you versus Falcon. What? Sorry.
You just caught up with it now? Oh man,
I'm behind.
That's so long ago.
Yeah, but the Falcon versus you game was pretty fun.
Oh, the Lizardman mirror.
Yeah, that was hype. Tic Tac Toe versus Nakai.
Yeah. Lizardman mirror is awesome.
We mentioned the matchups, but TNS specifically, why is Tomb King's vampire count so hard?
So there's a couple of reasons. One of the main ways of beating vampire counts is some great bows with Settra Chariot, and a Casket, and Gaze and Nagash kind of kills Settra Chariot and what's it called, the Casket. I just said it. So that becomes a big issue because you need Casket and Settra Chariot are like some of the best ways to kill Graveguard. And Tombguard Halberds, but Scabscrath kind of can help kill Tombguard Halberds. Graveguard can be hard to kill even with a Casket. And then there's mass options like Crypt Horrors, which without ranged pressure can be really hard to kill. And the more ranged pressure you have, the harder it is to protect versus vampire counts. And generally what happens is vampire counts kill all your infantry, and then your monsters can't grind down the rest, and they still have a few mass options or their lord left. If you kill the lord, you generally win, but it's easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like with a lot of undead matchups, it's if you can kill the lord, you win.
Yeah, it really is.
Like, it's just lord sniping incarnate.
Yeah, I feel like Tomb Kings especially need to rely on Lord sniping, at least more than the other ones. Like, vampire counts, you can get away without Lord sniping. You just kill the rest of the army, and as long as your Lord is alive, you win. With Vampire Coast, it's more keep your Lord alive in most matchups and keep your ranged online. With Tomb Kings, it's snipe the enemy wizard, snipe the enemy Lord, kill the rest type of stuff a lot.
That would make the Empire matchup hard, because the Lord they usually bring is borderline unsnipeable.
Yeah, Volkmar, Boris are very hard to snipe.
Yeah.
But I think in some matchups it's less important to kill the Lord or snipe the Lord. It's more important to kill the caster. Mainly any fire casters like Burning Head casters.
How is the Tomb King's Vampire Coast matchup, TN?
So the Tomb King Vampire Coast matchup, I'd say there's a couple different strategies. I think Great Bow Kite is actually viable. You could bring 3 to 4 Great Bows. I don't know. I think some rules are only at 3 Great Bows are allowed, but 3 to 4 Great Bows and just Kite is actually viable. The only way they could deal with it is like 4 cannons. And in my Great Bow Kite build, it's like 3 to 4 great bows, and then all mobility and chariots. So you can end up rushing them still, if you need to. But 3 great bows can beat 2 cannons pretty easily, and you can give them, depending on who your lord is, if you have Settra or Arkhan, you could either spirit leech the cannons to help, or you can give physical resistance to your great bows that are being targeted to help a little bit. But yeah, so there's great bow kite. Shoot the cannons, run away. You know, they only have scurvy dogs to catch you. Shoot the large, just shoot everything, and you know, clean up after the large is gone or the missiles. And then there's the max archer build, where you just have loads of skeleton archers, some tomb guard, skeleton frontline. You can try and kite, like, just shoot what the important targets, but if the coast player goes like heavy into mortars, it can be a little risky. Or if they can kite with big monsters, or they go double Leviathan, like that. It's also the style most coast players expect. So I don't do that very much anymore with max archers. Not a big fan of it anymore. And then there's I actually think there's a third style, which is just full rush. You just take 4 chariots, like 4 horsemen, Ushapti, melee Ushapti, Settra or Arkhan, and just run them through, because the best way for them to counter like Tomb King chariots is with their own mass units, like Prometheans or animated hulks. But a lot of times coast players are hesitant to bring those, partially because of great bows. And if they bring great bow counters like triple cannon, they don't have a lot of money to put into monstrous infantry.
Yeah.
So, and you could always spirit leech them down, or surround them with melee Ushapti, or shoot them with great bow Ushapti if you have them in the list as well.
On stream, I was just checking out how hard it is to kill Graveguard with Settra and the Casket, and you weren't kidding. That was the most annoying thing I've ever done. It took forever.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah, in the Vampire Coast matchup, I play Coast on that side. I don't know much about Tomb Kings, but I know it's very much about the Lord Snipe. If you can take out the Tomb King's Lord, you'll usually be okay clearing through the rest of the chaff, but
yep,
that's at least how I play it. Now, you've brought them up several times, and we've seen them on every stream that Tomb Kings have ever been on, but I'm just trying to find the specific question. Oh, well, whatever. I'll ask you it, and then I'll find it later.
Okay.
When do you not take Arkhan or Settra? They seem to be the only 2 lords we see.
So generally they're at least since the greenskin WoG change, you don't see Khatep anymore. Khatep's still okay. I'll talk about the other lords, and I'll talk about Arkhan and Settra again. But so with Khatep, you don't see him because he's very snipeable, squishy. He doesn't have the stats to be hard to snipe on foot. He doesn't have a mount that makes him harder to kill like Settra. His magic is not that impactful. Like, he has the cool vortexes, but they're not that great. Like, you can kind of use the incantation of vengeance or whatever, the overpriced miasma somewhat with him, but it's not that great. He's hard to keep alive. Arkhan and Settra are much easier to keep alive, and his damage output isn't the same as Arkhan's magic, and his monstrous capabilities aren't the same as Settra. Talita's okay because she's a duelist. Her ranged buffs really aren't that great. Like, you don't need her near the archers most of the time. You kind of want her like warding away enemy characters. She's really not that bad. It's just that her role isn't necessary as in the Lord slot. A lot of times Arkhan and Settra are just better. And her utility items don't really provide her too much. I know the staff can do somewhat okay damage but it's kind of expensive. The Venom Wave can do somewhat decently versus Chaff, but it's still not that great. She has decent armor on the snake and everything, but and decent mass, but she can still be sniped, kind of like with no healing, kind of like how some monstrous infantry lords like Nakai can struggle because they just get sniped. They don't have the most HP, but Khalida doesn't struggle with it quite as much because of the Nehekaran passive and arming ability that heals her a little bit, but it's just what she provides isn't quite always worth it, because she's like, if you bring everything, she's like 2k. If you take everything off, what is she? I forget.
If you take literally everything off, she's still 1,100.
And that's all. Is she on the snake?
No.
Oh, what was she on the snake? What's that, like 1,500?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 1,500, which isn't bad. But the if you take her, you have to take one of the what are they called? The other casters, which are a little overpriced in my experience, but they're still good. I guess I can get to them later. Then the Tomb King Lord, just generic Tomb King Lord, he's decent. Yeah, sometimes you could bring him on foot versus Wood Elves if you want, just a silver shield if you don't want him to get sniped, or versus any like ranged faction. But he doesn't bring much utility. He doesn't bring any magic. No like fun deficiency with him basically, unless you bring him on foot just to not be sniped.
Yeah. Before we get too far off Khalida, I will say Turns asked this stream a couple times how to fix her, and I think fully making her ranged would be cool, but it's weird that she has ranged buffs, but then is a duelist, and it's like, well, just give her a ranged attack, please. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Or you could also, there's lots of different ways you could fix Khalida. Like you could do the same thing, like Nakai could just use more HP. You could make the same argument for Khalida, just more than 4k HP. You could one way to really fix her would be to label her as a construct so she could get healed by necro attacks, but that's a little I don't know about that. You'd only be able to do that on the snake. You could make that argument, but
yeah.
He really doesn't need too much. He's really not that bad. It's really just utility, I think. Like if you need to give her a different tool, a utility item or ability, like let's say you give her a net, or well, maybe a net would be too strong. Well, no, net wouldn't be too strong because you already have nets in the roster if it was short range. So a net would probably synergize well with her, but or some sort of melee debuff, some sort of Assassin's Trophy type debuff ability. Right now, it's just that she has no utility.
Yeah,
I'd say. And then I guess I'll go back to Arkhan and Settra. Arkhan, just death magic, very useful. Summons, really useful. On foot, he has really decent combat stats already. He's not that easy to snipe on foot, which is where you mostly see him. Settra, you see him mostly on his War Sphinx, like 90% of the time. He's just tanky and good spells, mainly, well, good support spells. So there's the anti-large spell, the physical resist spell, and then I like Desiccation a lot. I think it's like one of the best spells for Tomb Kings, since they don't have options to Lore of Shadows. It's like minus Overcast is like minus 44 melee attack and minus something defense for like 20 or something seconds, and it basically just wins you in engagement sometimes.
That is pretty good. I didn't know the Overcast changed the melee attack. I thought it just made it last longer.
Yeah, Overcast changes it to like minus 44 melee attack or something. Yeah. It becomes like a Rival Hide Talisman.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll leave that for the Lords.
F&G asks, do you like the stream dog? Which was on stream. I've been moving the camera whenever Hazel's in the room. But she's adorable.
Yeah, I like the doggo. What type of dog is it?
She's a mutt. They found her in the middle of the woods, and we adopted her. But we're guessing there's a lot of lab in her.
Very cute.
Thank you. You mentioned the Nehekarra passive for healing. Hank Cyrus asked, how good is the Nehekarra passive?
So I think the game values it at about 250 gold, and I'd say I'd value it at about the same. Like if you a character who had an ability on them that was summon an Ushabti anywhere on the map, it'd probably be like 250 gold. The healing helps somewhat, but it's not like game changing or worth like a great deal. And considering you can't summon it until like towards the end of the game, I wouldn't say it's that like that expensive or high value. Like it's I wouldn't say it's like above or like better or worse than a lot of the other faction passive abilities.
Yeah, and the lore of magic is just that's the exact same as the lore of magic Nehekarra. I'm not sure whether it's supposed to be the Tomb King's passive or the Nehekarra spells, but that's like literally just the Vampire Count's passive, isn't it?
Oh, so for the lore of Nehekarra?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. But I mean, when I meant the passive, I guess I should have specified the
Realm of
Ushabti
Souls
summon and the Realm of Souls. Realm of Souls, that's what it's called.
I like forget that that's a thing in most of my games versus the Tomb Kings. I don't really notice that it's happening until you Ushabti summon.
Yeah, exactly. I don't either. It has like a little animation, but I don't even notice it half the time, and it doesn't really help too much. Like it's a few hundred HP for your big monsters sometimes in the overall,
yeah,
which can help, but it's not. It's like an Earthblood overall, I think.
It is nice. I don't think it's game changing, especially if you look at your chaff. Your skeleton spearmen have 7,000 health, so if they got all 3 Realm of Souls, that's 600. That's not even 10% of their health.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
But the Ushabti summon itself is still rather nice, because being able to go anywhere on the map versus in some matchups you can somewhat rely on it to kill an artillery or something. Like you take enough damage in a long prolonged skirmish game, but your mobility is starting to suffer, and you don't really have a good way to shut down a cannon or something. You could just summon the Ushabti, and that'll probably kill it.
TN asked, how do you approach the favorable Tomb King's Lizardman matchup? You and I already talked about that. I just wanted to acknowledge that it was there. Then, speaking of lores of magic, Azabel and myself have asked, what lore of magics do you think the Tomb Kings are missing?
I don't know much about lore, but what I know is that they don't have the Shadow Priest for some reason, which just makes me very sad, because the Shadow Priest would help very much.
Yeah, he's campaign exclusive for some reason.
Yeah, I actually think it would really help in some of their bad matchups, like Chaos. Like just having Pendulum and Melkos Miasma to help versus the infantry would just be really helpful.
Yeah, especially like, even if you wanted to tie it to like Arkhan's sub-faction or something weird like that. I just don't know why nobody has it. It's not like Shadow's magic is that powerful that it has to be campaign exclusive. It's the second most common lore in the game. I think I did the math.
Yeah, and they nerfed Pendulum a lot too, so it wouldn't be that oppressive, but it would help. You might see it like almost every game, and let's say that was the case, because you'd be like inclined to bring a secondary caster, you may start to see more like Khalida Tomb King Lord picks, just in matchups where you want the shadow magic, or you'd see naked Settra on a Sphinx with no magic. But
I'd pay to see naked Settra, but that's a conversation for a different stream, my friend. Mr. Hyde's asking in the chat, lore question, Team Khalida or Team Neferata? And if Neferata was released in Game 3 as DLC, do you think Khalida will get some changes because of the rivalry? Do you know anything about the lore behind that?
I know a little bit about the lore. I just know in terms of would she get a buff? I wouldn't put it past CA, but generally what CA does not do is give characters new abilities or anything, new abilities, items, unless that faction gets a complete update.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned it already. Might as well dive right in. I ask, if a DLC came out, what would you want added?
Um, you see, I don't know. I don't know if I'm actually qualified to answer this because I don't actually know what units are missing in lore. But probably, I saw a picture of this big giant scarab monster, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That could be fun.
Just more monsters, or if like let's say I'm going off what Tomb King don't have right now, like some sort of infantry with a little bit more armor, some sort of cavalry between Nehekarra and horsemen and Necropolis Knights. I think those are what I'd want the most.
Gotcha. I think like a scarab horde could be kind of fun. Like, you know, the rotting Prometheans for the Vampire Coast, like that, but scarabs.
Oh, that'd actually be that'd be kind of badass.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Um, when you mentioned taking Arkhan, you actually said that you take him mostly on foot. Tien asks, when you're taking Arkhan, how do you choose between the horse and the chariot?
I almost never bring them on either of those. So like the chariot is, I think Arkhan's chariot might be the worst chariot in the game, just because it has like no mass. It can barely pull through infantry. He gets stuck all the time, and he takes even more damage from magic missiles, which is the main reason you put him on foot instead of horse anyway, because magic missiles like Fireball, um, sometimes will double hit on chariot. On horse, you can sometimes dodge Fireball, but on foot, I like just hiding him behind a big monster to dodge fireballs. And another thing on foot is that he recharges his Tomb Blade with the summons a lot better because he can stay in melee versus infantry or enemy single entities more because his combat stats are decent and the AI seems to have trouble targeting foot lords over horse lords a lot of the times, at least for big single entities.
Yeah. I try to show stuff on stream that you're talking about, and running Arkhan's chariot into those Graveguard I had loaded up from last time, he stopped dead. He just completely stopped.
His chariot, if his chariot had like the same mass as Settra's chariot, I would honestly pick his chariot sometimes, like versus factions that don't have like Gaze of Nagash or something that could double hit them, like cannons or whatnot.
Yeah.
It is also a big target, so he's a little bit more vulnerable to missiles, and he's just easier to get sniped. And the thing is with Arkhan, you want him in melee, generating as many summons as possible.
Okay. Sorry, there was a weird thing in Discord that maybe someone joined with a phone number. That was odd. Hippie Hunter 7 asks in the Discord, do you consider Settra, Necrotect, Tomb Prince, Chariot Goon Squad a viable build? The Necrotect item and Settra's fire item 80E is really fun to use, but you haven't seen anyone besides Rubber Duck use it.
So Settra Chariot, Necrotect Chariot, Tomb Prince Chariot?
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. No, I know what he's talking about. So I think it's not viable in a lot of places, but there are some places where it is. Like the main problem with it is just how expensive it is. So you generally also don't have a lot of mobility options to support it. But for some factions, you could just have those 3 chariots kill almost the entire enemy army. So like versus Norska, it can sometimes work. You just charge them in, they kill Skinwolves, you pop Incantation of Desiccation, Overcast. You have like, I don't know, like 20 to 30 seconds to just not take any damage and kill everything around you. Then you have some Necropolis Knights that can maybe support. That's a pretty common with it. And then try and run over everything. But you don't have a lot of support, and they are chariots, and if they get stuck, that's when they can have a lot of issues.
Gotcha. Oh boy, Arkhan the Black took about 80% of his HP from one Storm Demon cast from Ikit Claw when he was on his chariot. That's not great.
I believe that.
This question's just weird, but I love killing spells, so I'll ask it anyway. Are War Sphinx chariots, and should they count towards the chariot limit? Alright. Killing spells, I asked him, but we all knew that was coming.
Yeah, you could make like you could say that about like there's literally you could say the same thing about a jabber scythe, I guess, because it's just the animations. But any anti-infantry monster isn't really a chariot per se.
Yeah. Killing Smalls also asked what lord and what circumstances. We did go through that. I just want to acknowledge that the question was asked. Speaking of chariots, are skeleton chariots the best chariots? Hank Cyrus.
No, Beastmen chariots and Greenskin board chariots are the best chariots. But after them, they're probably the best. Maybe War Lion chariots are tied, but they're a little more expensive, so maybe not. But they're very good. They're probably some of the best chariots.
There are more models of them than any other chariot in the game, I believe. And that can be nice.
I think there's same as Goblin Wolf chariots, 8.
Goblin Wolf chariots have 8?
Mm-hmm.
Well, sucks to be Goblin Wolf chariots because skeleton chariots have 9.
Oh, maybe they're 9 then. I think they're the same as Goblin Wolf chariots.
Nah, dude. Goblin Wolf chariots have 6. Suck it, goblins. Tomb Kings win at one thing. Greenskins can't take this from them.
Never mind that.
Yeah, how dare you? You mentioned them earlier. I've asked a lot of things from TN. I'll skip TN for now. We'll get some other people in here. FNG asks, what is the secret of the pyramids?
E equals MC squared.
Of course.
It lies at the heart of the pyramids. I hope someone gets that reference.
Someone will. There's like this question's a couple times, so again, if we touch on it again, I'll just mention it and move on. But Pugnabone asks, are there any units you want buffed? Which ones and how?
I think there's another question I saw that would also that I'll answer at the same time, and that would be Nehekara warriors.
Oh yes, yes, that was a popular question.
Yeah. So I think they're actually really close to being good. I think if you give them a spread formation, and then maybe like 10 armor, they'd be perfect. It's just that the tight formation makes them really prone to big charges or missiles as well, and those are the things that really tend to negate them, because once they get in melee, they're really not that bad in terms of cost effectiveness on the roster and what they need to do. Like they'll mulch like day troops. Another possible solution, instead of doing that in armor, you could just give them more speed, make them as fast as like crypt ghouls. I think crypt ghouls are better than them purely because of the speed. Like I'll sometimes pick followers of Nagash and take crypt ghouls over Nehekarra warriors just because they're faster. Even though they're not as like cost effective in melee.
Gotcha.
Those are the two different ways you could buff them.
We will roll right into that question just to skip past it. Are Nehekarras good or useless? Nehekarra warriors good or useless? How would you buff them? Killing Smalls, Real Human Being, and J Phoenix. Just answered that.
Yep.
Explain to Murphalurf why Seprulchral Stalkers are awesome. Contende.
So they have a great model, first of all, and second of all, they're really good in defensive builds. They have insane missile DPS. I know when they first had the change to Seprulchral Stalkers back many patches ago, when they changed their missile attack, the charge suspension versus large plus missile combo meant that they could beat a unit of demi-grip halberds in a 1v1 if they just charged straight at each other. And they got the volleys off that they could within the time that they charged them. So in a defensive box, it kind of means that they don't have to actually engage in melee with anything. They force things to engage in melee with them, kind of, because otherwise they risk getting shot to bits. And when they do, they're fighting something with charge suspension versus large and all that.
Yeah, Stalkers always do really good damage on large monsters too. With their ranged attacks.
They've somewhat fallen off in this recent meta just because of The infantry spam meta, less like large not being as good, Nehekarra or horsemen actually being a little bit weaker because of it. But I think once Cav changes come back again, and Cav becomes better, and Nehekarra horsemen become a little better, things will return to somewhat normal.
Cav, please come back. You can blame it all on CA. Okay. Mr. Hyde asks in the chat, when you take multiple chariots, how do you organize your micro to keep it all moving? Do you use key bindings or just your mouse?
Just my mouse. Well, I mean, that depends. Like, I don't know really how to... Like, my key, like, generally, in terms of, I guess in terms of, what's it called? Control groups, I just do... I generally have a lot, but I, like, click a lot. I don't, like, click 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I organize my key bindings, but then I just do most of the things with my mouse, just because I like to know where they're going to be on the bottom of my screen, but sometimes...
I'll press like 1 for Lord, 2 for Caster, 3 for Chariot, 4 for whatever else, and then the other ones I kind of just click most of the time.
What are your personal favorite matchups to play? Not favorite or disfavored, but like the fun you have with the game. Real human being.
As Tomb Kings?
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy Norska, surprisingly, even though it's not very easy. I enjoy playing... hold on, I'm thinking. Most of the elf factions I enjoy playing. Maybe not wood elves as much, but or dark. Well, I enjoy playing against high elves a lot. Dark elves, it depends on the map. Wood elves, I don't really enjoy playing too much because they're not always fun and interactive. Even though it's like a good matchup, it gets somewhat boring.
Gotcha.
And then what else? There's got to be another one. I enjoy playing against bad vampire counts players. Specifically the bad ones, not the good ones. That's not fun.
Inticity asks, what is the worst unit and how do you buff it? Is it Nehekarra Warriors, or do you have one that you think is worse? Because you said the Nehekarra Warriors were close to being good.
Yeah, I'd say there's an argument for Nehekarra Warriors, there's an argument for the Hyro Titan, and there's an argument for the Bone Giant, but I'd lean towards the Hyro Titan being worse than the Bone Giant. I think the question's more, is Nehekarra Warriors or Bone Giant? Or not, sorry, or Hyro Titan. And I think I lean to Hyro Titan. The difference, like, spells are really nice. The increased magic regen can like work well with Arkhan the Black, so he gets more like Fate of Bunas off in some matchups. But the very slow, doesn't hit super hard. The only one Spirit Leech. The main thing is speed as well. It's kind of like a giant that's more expensive, but armored with a tiny bit of magic utility and magic support. But it's prone to the same issues as a giant, except less so from non-armor-piercing missiles and more so from armor-piercing missiles and the inability to travel anywhere. So most of the time you use him, it's as a bodyguard for Arkhan the Black, which isn't that bad. Like, honestly, most Tomb King... I think basically every Tomb King unit has some utility. Like, I don't think anything's terrible.
DBD Ilmatar asks if Ethereal Nehekarran Warriors would be a good ROR.
So I'm assuming he's just talking about the Legions of Legend or whatever.
Yeah.
I think all the Legions of Legend are somewhat underpriced. The Flock of the Jaff, really strong for 500. The Storm Riders, rather strong for their price, although maybe not quite as strong as the Flock of the Jaff is for their price. The thing is with the ethereal Nehekara warriors, they do like kind of mitigate some of the issues the normal one have, but add a different issue of being ethereal and dying to magic damage. But as an ethereal unit, they're decent. I don't think it would really help the roster, but yeah, it'd still be nice sometimes versus factions without much magic damage. Because it's the only ethereal unit other than unless you take Nagash with Cairn Wraiths, or not Cairn, or whatever the Hex Wraiths. That's it. So I don't even when Hex Wraiths were better, you didn't see them too often. I don't think they'd really add too much, because I think you still just want Tomb Guard, because it's not like they are better versus Burning Head.
Oh, yeah, that would just kill all of them again.
Yeah, they're still not bad, though.
Yeah. They do okay against random chaff. I mean, they're still ethereal. Good for them. XMT Way asks, skeletons, what do versus dwarf and stronger skeleton? And what he means by that is counts and Dowie. We've talked about counts, but you said the Dowie matchup was bad. Is there any way to fight it, or do you just ban it?
I almost always ban it. Because if it's not... So, when the Cav changes came in, when the Dowie mass changes came in, it got a lot harder. I used to be able to win fairly consistency with mass Chariots. But mass Chariots kind of don't really push through Dowie infantry very well anymore. I haven't tried it too much recently. I don't know if it's changed at all.
No idea.
Hold on, sorry. Just typing something.
You're fine.
You can generally Ushapti Rush is an option. Arkhan the Black with summons on Slayers. Ushapti Rush try to kill things. There's a ranged build. You could use Great Bows and Caskets if you want, but generally the dwarves just hold too far to the end, and then just grind you out. Waste, Slayers end up catching your missiles. You don't have great mobility that can deal with them, or missiles. There's also a missile build you could do with just skeleton archers and ROR skeleton archers, but it's not that great. It really does depend on what the dwarves bring. It can be somewhat, do they have enough range and somewhat build roulette, but no matter what they bring, they always have a good chance.
No. So just don't fight it.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you approach the Chaos matchup from TN?
So, Chaos matchup, I generally just two Great Bows, one of which is the ROR, one War Kitty, Arkhan the Black, try and Spirit Leech down Arkhan if they bring Archaon. I also have some Tomb Scorpions, a Tomb Scorpion if I remember correctly, because you need them. Necrotex as well, because Sigvald's annoying, and Tomb Scorpion's Necrotex, and the big Sphinx can kill him. But you have to try and shoot their large. The ROR Great Bows can shoot the Cav pretty well. And then try and kill infantry with things like Buna and the monsters on top of summons. You try and summon on a unit, Buna a different unit, charge the unit that's on top of the summons with your monsters, or pull back and charge something else while they're fighting the summons. And basically what you want to do is not engage as much of the infantry as possible all at once. So you don't want your infantry in a line. You want them to engage your formation, but only be fighting 1 to 2 skeleton warrior units at a time. You get a Buna, you charge around, delay until delay as much as possible, because once your infantry dies, you've probably lost.
All right, that's bleak, but All right.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually not that bad. Like I've won it a lot of times versus good players, but it's really not easy. So I definitely would. I definitely do avoid it.
Ryan G asks, when do you take the double bone giant? And do you take a
Uh,
necrotect with it?
so the double bone giants is fun. I don't really think it's any good. Um, is there any place I would bring two bone giants? You could sometimes do it versus Vampire Coast and get away with it if they only don't have bring a lot of anti-large missiles, but it's risky. Skaven, you could sometimes get away with it with a Necrotect and healing if they only bring like a Warp Lightning Cannon and like a Giselle to kind of heal through it. Versus Empire, if they don't bring a lot, yeah, most of the time I'd say just bring one Bone Giant where you want it. You could maybe get away with two versus Greenskins and Vampire counts. Sometimes just as Lord Snipe type deal, but yeah, I'm still hesitant.
I don't blame you. They have giant in the name, which usually doesn't go well in this game.
Yeah.
Are you in the middle of a game?
Maybe.
Okay. I'll answer the YRTK question then. Real Human Being asked why are Tomb Kings, and Taco and I weren't super sure what that meant, so I just assumed you meant why are the Tomb Kings Tomb Kings? In which case, the short version of the lore behind that is that Nehekarra was just ancient Egypt, copy-paste, and it was south of the Empire before the Empire even existed, and they were a really great kingdom, and they were so great that they said, hey, fuck you in particular, and they started fighting each other, and they pretty much brought their civilization to ruin and went extinct, except for a secret cabal of the Lich Priests, the mages you can take as heroes. They're technically still alive. They had spells that kept them alive forever, and they looked all ugly and gross. And Settra, among other kings, like went, hey, listen, we want to live forever, but we don't want to be that gross looking. So when you figure it out, wake us up. And they were buried and mummified, so their skin would stay skin and whatever. And the Lich Priests have been studying that forever and ever, and the Empire was founded and came and went, and like all that stuff's happening, and they're just studying. And then a piece of shit called Nagash popped up, and he was like, hey, all those dead bodies in that desert, they'd make good slaves. And he started to resurrect them, and then he got interrupted in the middle of his spell and died for one of the millions of times Nagash died. And then all the Tomb Kings woke up, but they didn't really have any orders, so they still had their free will, but they were undead. And Settra didn't know Nagash woke him up, so he looked at all the Lich Priests, he's like, you pieces of shit, I'm ugly! And they're like, we didn't wake you up, boss. And then he exiled a lot of them, which is why Khatep is the Exiles of Nehek, because that's the Lich Priest cult that got kicked out because they failed to give the Tomb Kings immortality. And then they woke up and immediately started killing each other like they did when they were alive. That's the Tomb Kings lore.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Basically, Nagash. Cypher, you've heard that the people want the campaign lore of Shadows Cast to be playable for multiplayer. We did talk about that earlier. There's no reason it shouldn't be playable. All right. Do Tomb Kings players deserve to be loved? Real Human Being.
Well, technically, Tomb Kings, only the lords have hearts. So technically, I guess the player would be considered as the lord, I guess. So there's a heart, it's somewhat like undead, but I mean, I'd say everyone deserves to be loved. At least a little bit, right? Maybe.
That's a good answer. Jeremy had a question somewhere in here, and we haven't asked any of his questions yet. What models would you like to see get a visual update?
Oh yeah, that's a tough one because they're all. I honestly really like all the models. I could maybe say the Nehekarra warriors again. Although they still look good.
I gotta say that my least favorite model I've seen while looking at this question was the Graveguard. Graveguard looks so sad.
Tomb Guard?
No, just in Vampire Counts.
In Vampire Counts.
Yeah, a lot of the other models in the game actually look pretty good, and it'd be going from good to great. But the Graveguard, when I looked at them while I was talking to Tank, was actually like, okay, this actually sucks. Please fix it.
I could see that. I could maybe say like more differentiation between the Nehekarra warrior horseman and the non-Nehekarra variant. The 400 gold and the 650, like maybe makes the horses a little armored. The horses are a little bland.
Oh yeah, they are pretty bland.
Anything else?
A lot of the models still look good though.
Models look great. Even the Screaming Skull catapult looks great.
The constructs are beautiful though.
Yeah, all the constructs. You can't say anything about the constructs really.
Those are gorgeous, especially the Tomb Scorpion. I haven't really zoomed in on one in a long time, but
yeah, it's got the little like casket in the back.
Yeah, he's looking flashy.
Yeah. Well, I generally think the game looks great, so I have a hard time picking bad models.
Yeah. BBB Rocket Row asks, when do you rush and when do you play defensive? Is there like a generalization you could say?
I don't know if I could say. I'd say generally look at the map. Look at what your opponent is. Think, are they gonna be able to survive your range? Will they like wear you down through attrition? Like, let's say it's a small map. Are you gonna, if you go range, will you be able to kill their important units and route them off the field? Or is it too small of a map to where you actually need to kite? If it's like a defensive box type ranged build, you probably want a smaller map because you don't need to kite backwards very much. Hold on. If you want to rush, you'd probably want a small map as well, but you might not want a small map that doesn't allow you to surround your opponent.
Yeah. Because Tomb Kings aren't really good at punching through a line, so you definitely need to surround if you're going to rush.
Yeah.
Like your Chariots can, but your infantry won't follow, and then you might get a little isolated. Okay. Alright. Tomb King's main strengths and weaknesses, real human being. As a faction, let's just say 1-1. What would you say as a faction they're strong at, and what are they weak at?
Monstrous infantry ranged units are very, very good. Like, most factions don't have anything like that. Having a unit like Ushabti Grapos that's like their strongest unit, without a doubt. And you should really use them as much as possible. They are very unique. Their chariots are great. I would always try to make good use of their chariots. Their monsters are good, but often need some support sometimes.
What are they bad at?
So they're bad at infantry. The infantry is all low armor. They always need some sort of support when it comes to their infantry.
Gotcha. Speaking of infantry, Real Human Being asked the best matchup for Tomb Guard spam.
For Tomb Guard spam, maybe Beastmen. Maybe Beastmen, or High Elves, or Wood Elves. Wood Elves can sometimes struggle with Tomb Guard. I don't know if they should. Sorry, I'm in a game. I'm trying to. I'm focusing.
Yeah, Taco's in a finals right now. If you didn't get the joke at the start of the stream, that's fine, dude.
Yeah. Give me another question. Let me go back to that because that one's like I need to like think a lot It's not like a simple answer type of thing.
Yeah. Skeleton warriors or spears? Real human being.
Spears are definitely more universal.
Sorry, I got a text from my landlords, and I'm like, "Are you coming right now in the middle of an interview?" And they said no. That's a big question. Big question. When is Chariot Settra good? From Jay Phoenix.
So the best place for Chariot Settra is arguably vampire counts. The best answer they have to Chariot Settra is Gaze in the Gash, which is really bad. But a lot of counts players don't actually bring Gaze in the Gash, so it's somewhat like, it's really your best answer to Graveguard a lot of the times. So sometimes it's like mandatory almost.
Gotcha. Well, I might as well ask you, even though I just answered it in the chat. Manafox asked, do you ever use the Unbreakable spell in the Lore of Light? I told them the answer was no.
No. Yeah, I need to stop crumbling for a few seconds sometimes, you know.
Yeah, it's not a great spell. I can kind of take this one. From Real Human Being, list the Lore of Nehekarra spells in order of usefulness. So Taco talked about that a bit, but to do it a little more explicitly, in the Lore of Nehekarra, he said the Incantation of Desiccation is great. Incantation of Protection is probably the best, so it'd go Protection 1, 2, then Cursed Blades would be 3. And he said the Incantation of Vengeance is just a worse Melkoth's Miasma, and it costs 11 mana, which is actually a lot. But I'd still say it's somehow the fourth best, because Petra's Incantation of Righteous Smiting sucks, probably.
It's just not useful for what they want.
Yeah. And then Absolute Blast, I think we could both agree, is Skullstorm.
Sadly. Although it can be, like, cool with Khatep when you have Skullstorm and the bounce Skullstorm. It can be somewhat overwhelming, and you could still do a lot of damage to some units, but, yeah. Probably not the best. Yeah, it's like between Skullstorm and, what's the other one? The missile damage buff spell. It's between those.
Yeah, they're both pretty bad.
Yeah, Lord Nehekarra has some like very mediocre, some very mediocre stuff.
Stormrunner asked, why do you think the Shadows Mage was campaign exclusive when similar units like Queen Bess and the Bloodline Lords weren't?
I imagine they thought it was just too good.
Okay.
I really don't know why.
Yeah.
I know when they added it, the Tomb Kings were in a very strong spot in the meta, so maybe they were just scared.
Isn't the fire vulnerability across the QG roster obsolete for today's balance? That's from Asbel. I don't know what QG is, but I'm assuming that just means generally the whole roster.
So the only things that have fire weakness are the Lords, and except Khatep. And it doesn't really it's not really bad. I don't really think it's like obsolete or anything. I mean, the Tomb King Lords don't really suffer from it too much except from Fireball spam, but if it's like Settra on a Sphinx, Fireball spam won't kill him eventually. They'd have to use a lot of magic and Fireballs to be able to kill him with it.
Yeah.
And it's not like the roster suffers from fire weakness. It's just that Burning Head is really strong against the infantry because it's low armor. Like, none of them have weakness to fire. Only the Lords. And they don't really suffer from it too much because there's not that much fire damage in the game.
Gotcha. I just cast 3 Skullstorms on a Graveguard, and they're feeling pretty fine about it. Okay, Ryan G, I will ask that one. It's already on the questions, but I acknowledge I saw that one. Jeremy Flying Taco, will you teach me how to Dougie? Do you even know how to Dougie, dude?
Of course, but The secrets are for me only. I don't share my talents.
Gotcha. Jeremy did ask on the sheet, I'm bad at Tomb Kings, how do I get better?
Generally, just playing them, but when you play them is to try to experiment with different build styles. Like, don't just try to rush. Try to use a defensive build. Try to use a kite build. Try different units you don't normally bring. Literally just experiment with the roster. Like, don't ever count something out or count an idea out until you've tried it.
Mm-hmm.
And even after you've tried it, maybe try it again, even if it didn't work. Because sometimes execution is a big thing, and experimentation is the best way to figure things out.
Gotcha. Dilatron asks, why does the ROR anti-large Sphinx with 25% fire resist still lose to Taurox?
It doesn't. It destroys Taurox horribly. Taurox loses, like, without the Sphinx losing 20% health almost.
Alright, now I'm getting mixed messages. I have to test this.
Test it. It'll help dumpster Taurox. The problem is just that the big Necro Sphinxes aren't very good versus Beastmen because of low splash, like infantry bogging them down, bad targeting, long animations where they make it a big animation swing towards something, but it kills one infantry, and then it takes them a few seconds to get up another attack animation. Then they swing. There's no splash, and they just target another infantry, and then they die. It's really just bad targeting, bad AI targeting, and low splash that holds them back in the matchup.
That sounds like
they dumpster individual in 1v1s.
That sounds like Queek, honestly. Just all the problems I have with Queek is like his really long animations, not a lot of splash damage, slow.
Yeah, at least he doesn't cost 2,300 though.
He can if he tries. Real Human Being asks, do all Tomb Kings players love boning?
Well, I mean, doesn't everybody?
Doesn't everybody? Are vampire counts the worst undead?
I think vampire counts are the best undead, actually. I think vampire counts are very strong. I play a lot of counts too. They generally have very polarizing matchups. Like, if you're gonna lose to counts and it's a good counts player, they're always gonna win unless you get a lucky Lord Snipe.
Mm.
Like, they have bad matchups, but generally I think counts are very strong. Like, I think counts are stronger than Tomb Kings and Vampire Coast right now. I think they're a close to top tier faction personally, but they're held back by lack of missiles and the reliant on magic play and somewhat like cheesy, other cheesy plays where you have to try and play around the attacking role. But I definitely think they're stronger than Tomb Kings overall.
You mentioned the tier list. TN asks, what apart from the lore of fire is keeping Tomb Kings at the bottom of most tier lists? Or could they actually be good if wind spells got changed?
So I think Tomb Kings are good. I think people just, when it comes to tier lists, always underestimate Tomb Kings. Like, they had a very low win rate in the WWC, and I think it's indicative of Tomb Kings actually being somewhat difficult to play. Like, I think Tomb Kings were the lowest win rate faction in the World Cup. Yeah. But I think there were also some players who were having like 70-80% win rates with their Tomb Kings in the World Cup. It depended on who played them in the matches that they played them. A lot of times, people just hear Tomb Kings are favored versus something like Greenskins, and then they lose it like 100 times because they don't know what they're doing. It's not an easy faction to play because you really have to focus on keeping your infantry alive. I think Burning Head certainly is an issue, but they really are a very strong faction. But you have to play them multi-dimensionally and play rush, play kite, play defensive, and you have to know how to play all three of those play styles in a faction and know all the matchups. There's a lot of knowledge you need to know. Mm-hmm. And because they also don't dominate anywhere, really. So
what I'm hearing is that putting them on an F in most tier lists isn't fair. They should be more of a D+. and
Well,
they're a really strong faction as long as you don't want to win, right? I feel like that's a fair assessment of what you just said.
well, I mean, I think it's there's nothing. They're not terrible anywhere. It's a faction where if you're comfortable with your skill set, since they have so many tools, you shouldn't feel like you're gonna go in unprepared, or you won't have a tool to counter something. Like in their even matchups, you shouldn't feel bad if you feel like you can outplay your opponent. You shouldn't feel like you're gonna get cheesed. Tomb Kings can really deal with a lot of cheese due to their a lot of their ranged pressure tools. The thing they can struggle with in terms of cheese is infantry spam sometimes, but you can actually counter that if you expect it.
So bouncing off of that, Way and Neckbet asks, are Tomb Kings a first pick?
I actually did first pick them a lot. Hold on. Let me just think 1 second for something really quick. Hold on, just give me 1 second.
You're fine. I will answer another question just really quickly that keeps getting asked.
Okay, I can focus now. What was the question again?
Tomb King's first pick.
Tomb King's first pick. So I actually have had Tomb Kings as my first pick for multiple patches in a row. Tomb Kings were my first pick in World Cup. Tomb Kings were my first pick before that patch. Tomb Kings have been one of my first pick factions for the longest time. It's just because there's so many tools, I feel like I'm comfortable not getting cheesed as long as I know the matchup. But if I don't know the matchup, you're going to get wrecked. But I felt confident enough in most matchups where if I banned Counts, banned Dawi, that I was happy. I didn't ban Chaos a lot. In a lot of matchups, it did depend. Like if I knew the player didn't play Counts, I would ban Chaos instead of Counts. But I was actually fairly confident because there's so many different tools they have. Like I wouldn't want to pick some factions as the first pick, like Vampire Counts, because they lack some tools that can make them vulnerable to some playstyle. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. Speaking of all the playstyles and stuff, this is from me. Are Tomb King's Horsemen weak? Like Nehekarra Horsemen and Skeleton Horsemen both feel really underwhelming whenever I try to use them.
Nehekarra Horsemen used to be overpowered, and then they got nerfed on top of the cavalry patch. So they lost melee defense, and the cavalry patch hit them. You used to be able to use Nehekarra Horsemen to not only kill the enemy mobility in combination with spells like the physical resistance and anti-large buff, but you'd also be able to cycle charge low tier infantry like Empire Halberds, Empire State Troops, High Elf Spearmen, Orc Boys, Savage Orcs, stuff like that. But since the cavalry changes, it made them very inefficient. They took so much damage on the charge, and they just wouldn't last long enough into the battle to do a lot. They're still useful as utility and mobility control, but it's really not that great. They're not as great as they used to be. They used to be absolutely wonderful, but they've certainly fallen off.
Pugnabone asked how to make Khalida viable. We talked about that earlier, just acknowledging I saw it. When to use Kepra Guard from Pugnabone. That is the ROR for Tomb Guard that regenerates.
Yeah, so Kepra Guard are pretty good. I like them versus Lizardmen for the most part. Beastmen, they could be any faction that doesn't have Burning Head, or even if they do have Burning Head. If you just want a core unit that can hold for a long time, they're decent as long as you can protect them from missiles and monstrous infantry. And even then, they're not that bad. It's just that sometimes they're expensive and sometimes you want to go wider.
Yeah. There was another ROR question in here. Oh, what is the best ROR on the roster from Real Human Being?
best ROR, the Shafty Grapo ROR, without question.
Just
Shafty Grapo ROR can kill large, kill infantry, kill everything.
all right. They do have low ammo, though. I will say that.
They do, but like they can kill like a Dreadsorian on approach with just. They do more damage to single entities. They might not have great ammo, which so you sometimes want to use good targets, but it's often not a big issue.
Oh god, Skeleton Horsemen and Nehekarra Horsemen have lower charge bonuses than most, like, greenskin infantry.
Yeah, they're not. They're really like defensive pieces right now. Beforehand, they're still like Nehekarra Horsemen had decent. What's it called? Melee stats for an undead cavalry unit. So like in sustain, they do well. Like you could have Nehekarra and Horsemen beat up Wild Riders in sustain. That was their main thing. Like the charge bonus has not really been that great. It also has somewhat decent weapon strength for a 650 gold cavalry unit, which kind of compensates, but somewhat decent. They're still not terrible. I think if they used to literally be, you'd bring 4 of them in every almost a lot of matchups, but they're really just mass units right now.
Mm-hmm. In lore, High Queen Khalida had a dwarf son. Would an undead skeleton dwarf character be viable as either a legendary lord or a legendary hero? Hammond. That's. I don't know if I would want that personally. Like, just.
I don't. So it'd be worth considering as a lord option in some matchups where you're worried about being fireball sniped. Like let's say like versus Chaos, you're really worried about Arkhan the Black or Settra getting worn down by Fireball from Archaon or a Firecaster. Having a high armor shielded unit Lord could be somewhat handy. I don't think it'd be worth taking always, but it certainly would be an option that you should entertain sometimes, just because it'd basically be unsnipable. So, yeah, I wouldn't discount it.
Speaking of hypothetical lords, would you want a future legendary lord and its generic version to ride on some sort of flying unit for a true kite build? Or is that playstyle just not recommended for Tomb Kings? That's from Hammond.
So I think Tomb King Kite is very strong, particularly Great Bow Kite. I think a flying lord would be decent. Sometimes the problem would be, well, I don't think air control would be too big of a problem because you just support them with missiles. And it would keep them off the ground from being sniped. And in some matches that could be really useful. So any sort of flying lord would be great. And if it was generic flying caster lords, that might be all you see.
Yeah. Casters in the sky are generally really good.
Yeah, unless it's like overpriced for some reason, but I think it would probably be fine. A lot of Tomb King lords are somewhat overpriced sometimes anyway.
And I'll ask the gosh darn question that everybody wants to know. Pugnabone asked on my Discord, somebody else just asked in the YouTube chat, and a million people have asked me on the street. Like when I'm in the grocery store, random old women just walk up to me and they're like, "Why don't Tomb Kings have generic caster lords? Do you want them? Do you not want them on your roster? Why are they not already there?"
Yeah, I mean, they'd be great. I don't know why they're not here. I imagine there's some sort of like great caster or whatever, Nehekarra and great Lich Priest or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be nice because they'd probably be cheaper, and a cheaper lord that still provides strong magic support would be useful. And hey, maybe they'd add Lore of Shadows.
Maybe. And you don't have a Lord of Light. You need to bring a Lich Priest of Light for that.
Honestly, if Lore of Light hero was in the Lord slot, you would probably sometimes bring it. It's just that you pay such a premium to try and bring nets with the hero because what's their base cost? Because they're not cheap.
The Lore of Light hero, if you took literally everything off of them, is 300. But then if you put spells on them, that's going to cost like 100 a spell. So if you wanted a net and Shem's Burning Gaze, they're like 545 on foot.
Okay, it's actually better than I thought it was.
It's better than I thought it was, but it's still not as cheap as Empire Casters. Empire Casters are cheap as hell.
I don't know why I thought they were more expensive. Maybe I'll have to bring it more on foot with nothing.
Yeah, generic Empire Casters 250 before you had the first spell.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a lot of their stuff is really expensive. Like their items are both 150 and 230. So that can be a lot. Oh, hey, I accidentally just stumbled right into that. Are Tomb King's heroes overpriced for what they offer? Do they need a buff? That is from Azabel. And to add on to this before you answer, when you're watching high levels Tomb Kings play on like Turin's stream or something, you almost never see like, oh, double Tomb Prince or oh, a Necrotect and a Tomb Prince. Like you see Skaven double assassin builds, you see why am I blanking now? Double Exalted Hero. It's just like for Tomb Kings, I never see Tomb Princes.
Oh, I do know, like, for example, King of the Dead, before all the changes happened to mass and infantry and everything, he brought a hero squad very often. He had a lot of, I guess you could say, Tomb Prince goon builds, like Arkhan double Tomb Prince. That was very common. Also, Necrotechs are very common right now. You see two in a lot of matchups. It's just that Tomb Princes sometimes get outshone by, what's it called?
The Necrotechs?
Tomb Scorpions, because they're both like 1,000 gold. Sometimes you just want a Tomb Scorpion instead because it doubles for anti-infantry and it's still decent enough for its large and it has more HP and can be healed. But it's not as fast, it can't get where it needs to go quite as well.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm just...
Ryan G asks, how do you deal with Chameleon Stalker spam chewing through your infantry?
Chameleon Stalkers? So Chameleon Stalkers are really annoying and they have helped the Lizardmen a lot in this matchup, but not to the point where you need... Like, if they just shoot your skeleton warriors, and they don't hit the Tomb Guard, you're probably fine. Like, you just let them waste their ammo into it and shoot them. You probably want to have some sort of chariot-like unit in your build to help kill them specifically, because chariots will like wreck them. Although there was this one time where I had a chariot charge one of my Chameleon Stalkers, and it had the charge order on, but it like stopped on the edge, and then the Chameleon Stalkers killed it. But that doesn't normally happen.
Yeah, those grenades, man. This is about Chameleon Stalkers, not about Tomb King, so I'll keep it short. But those units piss me off so much because you don't know what's going to happen when you charge them. And I hate inconsistent units because it's so hard to learn how to deal with them when it's like, charging them with a chariot 90% of the time is a good idea, but 10% of the time you just lose the whole chariot.
Yeah.
They bother me because they're inconsistent. Same with like my Skaven. If they throw their grenades on the approach, they can shatter a Skaven slave unit before they even hit the front line. But if they don't throw their grenades, they'll get stuck there forever. So sometimes I'll be talking to my friends and I'll be like, oh, this Chameleon Stalker build's so fucking toxic. I can't do anything about it. And they're like, all right, show us. And the Stalkers just don't throw their grenades. And I'm like, I promise it was oppressive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They are very inconsistent units. Bothers me a lot too.
Is it best of 3 or best of 5?
It's best of 3.
Are you winning?
No.
What? Against who?
I didn't bring a good build. I might be winning, but I don't think I am. I didn't bring a lot of anti-missile.
Who are you fighting?
Fighting Dactor.
Dude, kick his ass. Dactor doesn't know how to play.
I don't have any. I didn't bring anything to kill Marauder Horseman.
I've never heard of this person. This, what did you call him? Schmachter? He's a nobody. Kick his ass, Taco.
But what if I want to lose? Huh?
Well, then you lose magnificently, because everything you do is perfect.
I've heard that too many times today.
There's like 5 more questions about that, but I'll let it go for now. Let's ask some silly questions while you're busy. I've been told I'm supposed to simp for Faye, Ariel, Direfin, and Isabella von Karstein, but why should I instead simp for High Queen Khalida? This is from Jeremy.
Don't simp. It's not healthy for you. Simping is bad.
Simping is bad. The facts. I don't know why this is in the Tomb Kings section, but I do know why this person's asking it. Foreshadowing. DBD Ilmatar asks, how cuddly is Gorich?
Not very. No. Wait, what does that have to do with cookies?
It's because of a replay you sent me recently. But I just thought I would ask you anyway. Alright. Should dog units get a bonus versus Tomb Kings? Real human being.
That'd be kind of fun. I don't actually think it'd be good for balance, but it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Why do you... This is an interesting question. I'm not sure how you're going to answer it, but no answer is a wrong answer. Why do you think the Tomb Kings were released as a single DLC?
Well, haven't they all been released as a DLC?
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, anything that wasn't in the base game is a single DLC.
Yeah. Like, any, individual faction release is a single DLC. I think it's always been like that.
Yeah.
You know, Beastmen, I guess... Well, they got a second one, but... They're always released as an individual DLC.
Yeah.
Maybe they get an update down the road type of thing.
Which I would love to see. I think the Tomb Kings roster, while you've been singing its praises this whole time, I think it's very small, and I would like it to be a little bigger.
It is a little small, yeah.
Even if if they get the Lizardmen treatment, where they get a bunch of units added, but most of them are terrible, I would still just like it for the spice.
Yeah.
Oh, their base units are all the good ones, but you can take the Giant Scarab if you want to. It's just not worth it. But it's like, hey, Giant Scarab, campaign is more fun. Anyway, I'm a campaign player a little bit.
I like campaign. Campaign's fun.
Campaign is fun. I burned out a little bit recently, and I'm trying to store up my energy for 3. I don't want to enter 3 burned out. What is the most cost-efficient unit on the whole roster? Real human being. Cost-efficient.
On the whole roster.
Yep. Not lords. Not lords or heroes, because obviously it's going to be a mage, because mages are always, but, units.
Crafty Grapos.
Fair. That's a big question. We'll leave that. Loopy asks, was Nagash weak? My answer is yes.
Yeah, Nagash was weak. Everyone knows this.
Yeah.
Loopy knew too. He just wanted to reaffirm.
Yeah. Real human being asks, swiftly or quickly? That's what Isabella constantly screams.
I like swiftly better. Less used.
Spooky, scary skeletons, yes or no, from Real Human Being? I mean, yes, or you don't have a roster, right?
Wait, repeat the question. I totally dozed out, and then I just heard you don't have a roster response.
Spooky, scary skeletons, yes or no?
Oh, well, some of them are cuddly, but in general, yeah.
Yeah. This is a weird question, but I enjoy it. Fuck, marry, kill, Settra, Arkhan, and Khatep. I'd probably marry Khatep. I'd kill Arkhan. And Settra would be a nice one-night stand, but his whole the imperishable bit would get boring in a long marriage. Where
I mean, I think I like maybe Khatep because he's very loyal. You banish him to another plane of existence, and he still wants to be at your side.
Well, yeah, but if Settra doesn't do the dishes, right? And you'll be like, hey, can you start pulling your weight around the house? And you'll be like, Settra does not serve! And you'll be like, it's not serving, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
Gotta work together.
Come on, I'm not your slave.
Oh, Settra.
Yeah.
Neckbet asks, so when is Arkhan the Black finally getting the lore of vampires?
As soon as Tomb Kings get lore of vampires, they become the best faction in the game. Like, just vampires with Nehek is crazy. I know, like, in 2v2s, sometimes you bring Settra on a chariot with, like, because he gets Nehek. Settra on a chariot with lore of, like, Nehek is absolutely busted. Oh my gosh. Because Settra chariot is good individually, but if he is healing, he's crazy good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Tien asks, how good is the Ushabti summon? Is it worth taking skeletons to die just to get the summon off if your army isn't otherwise big enough?
So I think your army is almost always going to be big enough, like no matter what. Even like the way when it doesn't pop very consistently is when you have a few Tomb Guard, like an elite Tomb Guard build. You have like 5 Tomb Guard, which I wouldn't consider very good builds. Like I think, like, let's say you only have a few infantry units. Like most of the time, I recommend like 8 to 10 infantry units for Tomb Kings. But like there are builds where you can have like 6 or 7 or 5 even, in some really crazy builds, or 3 in a really crazy rush build. But you're almost always gonna get it at some point in the game, and in the only times where you're really gonna miss not having it is in a box build where you have like 5 Tomb Guard, and you're not losing casualties, and you need to summon to actually help defend against some sort of like artillery piece or something like that. But getting the triggers don't really matter throughout the game in terms of the passive healing.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is really just getting the Ushabti summon and having it be timely. I'd say that the most of the time in the Tomb King builds where I only have like 3 to 4 infantry units, it's like 3 to 4 skeleton warriors, and then the rest is mobility versus something like Vampire Coast, Empire, or something like that, or dwarves. The Ushabti summon isn't really necessary because in those builds you're already going full disruption, full shutdown backline, shutdown range, and having it in the end game can sometimes actually be kind of helpful. So yeah, I don't think you need to worry about it too much. You're generally going to have enough infantry to have it proc anyway. Just try to stay away from like 5 Tomb Guard and no skeleton warriors, you know.
Got it. With 5 Tomb Guard, it does proc if 4 of them completely die.
Yeah.
Testing it right now, because I have a 5th and we're almost there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah! So yeah, probably not worth it.
Yeah.
Throw 1 skeleton warrior in that bad boy. When do you use the Snake Knights, the Necropolis Knights? And how would you use them? TM.
So they were previously really good, like decent before Cavalry patch. They've had lots of changes throughout their lifespan in the game. They've never really been bad. I'd say they're still good. I still use them versus high elves fairly often. I know King of the Dead used to use them versus Chaos. He used like Arkhan the Black, Necro Knights, Tomb Prince, and I think a Necrotech. Then he just cycle charge the infantry and use them to surround single entities. They're actually rather decent versus single entities if they get a surround. And there's no support, like no summons or anything. Generally, I use them. Right now, I'm using them versus high elves as a high armor unit that pushes through and shuts down backline as well. They can also be used defensively in some let's say like in a matchup where you're not expecting a lot of high armored infantry like Chaos. Like versus Norska, for example, you can use a unit of Necropolis Knights to help countercharge against Skin Wolves and deal some good cycle to enemy infantry. And the good versus Samir and the good versus anything like that. Sometimes you don't see them very often because they do tend to be better in backline protection, but right now Seprulchral Stalkers tend to be a more of a pick in backline protection, or just right now more infantry and cheaper mass units in combination with great bows instead of Necropolis Knights. I do think Necropolis Knights are good. Use them. You can use them with Necrotechs and their healing. They do have really strong HP per model with only 18 models, and they tend to be kind of tight together in terms of how they charge units, so they don't tend to suffer too much from low model counts on charge, as some others do, or in melee when they're charging infantry. But they do still suffer in prolonged combat due to low model count. But I do think that as a defensive unit, try them, and versus something like High Elves where they don't have armor-piercing missiles, they could also still be okay.
I just got a notification in Discord. Do you want to share the happy news, or should I?
What's the happy news?
I was laughing my ass off trying to be quiet, but I just see, cheers to Flying Taco for winning today's tournament. And I'm like, you fucking won the final.
I did. I won.
God damn it. You're making us feel bad. Anyway, sorry. I thought that was hilarious. Which lord has the best hat, and which is the worst? BBB Tequila Sunset.
Oh, Settra has the best hat. Khatep has the worst hat, hands down. Khatep has this silly big crown. Settra's is the... I don't know. I just like the look of Settra's. Khatep's looks a little silly. Arkhan has a good one, but Settra, the imperishable all the way.
I would agree, now that I'm looking at them in the campaign map.
Yeah.
Khalid's is maybe the worst in my opinion, but I don't really like that style of hat.
I think it fits her character though more. It wouldn't work on any of the other Tomb King lords, but for her it's very Egyptian.
Yeah. That makes sense. Dog's back. She was chasing the cat around, but she's back for now. Okay, what do we got? We're running up to the end. We got this, dude. Which would you rather fight in real life? A direwolf, a scurvy dog, a wolf rat, or a chaos warhound?
I probably wouldn't want to fight the direwolves or scurvy dogs. They seem, I feel like undead things. There's no part or something I could easily target. It's probably already fallen out, and the best way to kill it would be to burn the whole thing. I feel like a chaos warhound would probably be too thick to cut through, and or something like that. I feel like I'd probably fare the best versus a wolf rat. I feel like they're the most living creature that there is, and probably the one where I could get maybe a lucky hit in the heart or something, or slit the throat and it actually die, unlike the other ones.
See, I would take the wolf rat because all you'd have to do is raise up your arms and say boo, and it would rout.
yeah, that too. Yeah, even though it's technically the most elite of the four, right? In terms of Warhammer.
Yeah, it's actually the best. Their leadership is just their only bad stat.
Yeah.
How much money did Human Boy pay you to do this, and was $37 enough? That's from TN and myself.
Wait, I was dyslexic and read it as 73.
I'll pay you whatever you want. All right. Um, there have been several requests for this specific question in the chat and in the Discord. Oh, a sleepy puppy. What is love, Mr. Taco?
What is love? What is hate? Isn't there a song with those lyrics that I'm supposed to say that I don't remember the lyrics to? That I'm probably really disappointing someone.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
Oh, there it is.
Don't hurt me.
No more.
There.
There
You
we
did
go.
it, you crazy people.
Good enough.
All right, we'll flip into an actual question after all these shenanigans. RTK Kafka asks, how do you play Tomb Kings versus Beastmen? Let's assume the Tuskar Chariots are fixed.
Okay. So there's been a couple lines of thought. One is Kite with Skeleton Horseman Archers, which are great. Nehekarra Horsemen, great bows, full mobility, basically, and some monsters to help support, like War Sphinxes or something. Not Scorpions, because they're too slow. And that can work on big maps. It's fallen out of style a little bit since cavalry changes, and Nehekarra Warrior Cav aren't as great at cycle charging Goreherd anymore. But it can still be okay. But ammo control becomes an issue now. Then there's more defensive styles. You could use Sepulchral Stalkers, like some Tomb Guard, decent frontline, Arkhan, Tomb Scorpions, Necrotechs. You can use a War Sphinx. I don't know if it really fits. I think Tomb Scorpions are better. Tomb Guard Halberds, Skeleton Warriors, or no Tomb Guard Halberds and just max Skeleton Warriors. Maybe ROR Tomb Guard if you want, but you want you could actually even bring a Bone Giant if you want to try and snipe the Chariot casters. But if Beastmen bring no Chariot heroes, then the Bone Giant kind of the only thing it can target is Minotaurs, which they might not bring, or Gorbals and Taurochs, and they kind of actually not do too much versus Gorbal and Taurochs because it doesn't double hit like it does a Chariot, and they have more HP. Which generally means maybe a Stalker or a Great Bow instead, but it can be hard to defend a backline versus Beastmen. So you want to go Monster Mass like double Tomb Scorpion, Arkhan with Necrotechs, and then lots of infantry. And then you'd probably need some Carrion to help fend off throwing axes in the end game. Throwing axes can actually have a hard time hitting Tomb Scorpions sometimes, so that can help you. But the trouble becomes making sure you hold your formation long enough to where it doesn't disappear and you still have a unit of like Great Bows left and all their infantry's gone. Like you just have the ROR Great Bows to shoot the throwing axes. At the end game, you're probably in a winning position. But it can be difficult now that Beastmen have Manticores, because defending Great Bows is always difficult when there's Manticores that can just sit on them, land on them. And it basically means you need to sit near them with your Tomb Scorpions Arkhan core if you bring Great Bows. But it can be difficult, and it kind of makes you want to push out towards something like throwing axes. Mm-hmm. Like thankfully throwing axes aren't a huge issue because they have somewhat low ammo, can somewhat miss, they could try, and you could somewhat dodge sometimes. But you still need some sort of counter to them, even if it's just Carrion or Nehekarra or Horse Archers. So one of the reasons you can't just have Horse Archers on their own outside of like a defensive box is they have fairly low speed for a missile cav. It's like I think it's like 76 or something, and dogs can catch them rather easily. You can try to run back into the box, but then you just have Horse Archers sitting in a box in your defensive build, and they can't retreat out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of can mess up how your other units move around in there, and they kind of just have less DPS. And then let's say they bring some Ungor Raiders, and then they're just getting shot by Ungor Raiders in the box. They can't leave. It can somewhat feel awkward. But I do still think playing more defensively is good. Bringing a Bone Giant's really not bad. I actually think bringing a Bone Giant versus Greenskin is actually meta with Arkhan the Black, because sometimes Arkhan the Black struggles when there's a Death Hag with Spirit Leech, but Bone Giant can kind of keep the Death Hag honest and keep them out of range and force the enemy to try and dodge, which they can do, but eventually they need to focus their micro elsewhere, which is when you can shoot them and basically kill them. But yeah, try Stalkers as well to defend the backline, and try some Tomb Guard skeletons, and maybe one Chariot, because they can like wreck Gores. They'll struggle a little bit versus Bestigors, but you could tech in Fate of Buna to help, because they probably won't have many, if any.
Gotcha. We'll save the Game 3 stuff for the very end. Killing Smalls said the Tomb King is better than Settra in their opinion. What heresy is this? That's from TN, and I'll add on to it for the sake of our conversation. When do you take the generic Tomb King, if you ever do?
So I basically the matchup I most often take the generic Tomb King has always been Wood Elves, just on foot with a silver shield. He's really not a bad fighter, but I don't think he's better than Settra, because when you want to bring a Tomb King, you just want a Lord that doesn't die, because he has the item, the damage resist item, and he has the armor sundering ability. So you could actually bring him versus dwarves, and then the archer build with the armor sundering stuff. It's not that bad. Maybe that's the best matchup for him, actually. But I don't think he's better than Settra, because when you bring Settra, he's on the Sphinx, and if you're bringing the Tomb King on a Sphinx, you still need a caster. You're kind of paying a premium. The other casters, like if you want Death Magic and a War Sphinx, then you bring Arkhan the Black, a Necrotect, and a War Sphinx, because you can actually heal it. Settra has various different abilities that can help him. You know, if you want Settra and his magic, you want Desiccation, and mainly. Otherwise, you'd bring Arkhan the Black for Death Magic. Because healing a Necro Sphinx is better than not being able to heal a Necro Sphinx. And having to pay a premium on an extra caster is generally not worth it. I gotta double check. I think his stats the same as Settra's on a Chariot or on a Sphinx? I gotta double check that. I want to see if there's any differences.
He has 38-38. Settra has 40-38. Anti-infantry, 490 weapon strength. They're similar. Quite similar.
Yeah, the Tomb King's slightly less HP, leadership, melee attack, but it's basically the same thing. So basically the same stats. I think they're very similar in price. Completely stripped. Let me double check.
Also, I am being viciously attacked by my dog, and stream is doing nothing about it.
What do you want them to do?
Call the police. Stop this abuse. I'm being destroyed by this pupper.
So Settra pays 100 gold premium for 150 HP, 5 leadership, and 2 melee attack, which isn't great, but it's really not that bad. And considering he is a spellcaster, you don't have to pay the 300 gold premium just for the extra body of a Lich Priest. So it's technically worth it in some ways, because you don't really pay for the melee stats of the Priest. You sometimes pay for it being a separate entity, but not necessarily. So it's not necessarily even more cost efficient to bring a Tomb King on a War Sphinx, because you have to pay the 300 gold premium to get the body for the Lich Priest. And his items and abilities aren't necessarily better than Settra's. Like, he has My Will Be Done, which is basically the same thing as Undying Will, except Undying Will is greater effect range in 55 instead of 30 meters, which actually is kind of big.
But he has 16 leadership.
And then the Amulet of Fasta is really strong, but it's really, I think, mostly versus dwarves.
Missile parry with shield is such a weird stat.
Yeah, and he loses it on the Sphinx, so it's not like he still has it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's weird. Um. Are any of these more serious? I've seen a distinct lack of Khatep on his Roomba and caskets in general lately. Why do you think they've fallen out of fashion? Real human being.
I don't know if caskets have fallen out of fashion. I think I've seen a lot of caskets recently, even in places where I haven't previously seen caskets, like Wood Elves. Khatep's fallen out of fashion. I talked a little bit about why Khatep's not seen, but he's not also seen on a casket just because he's easy to snipe on a casket. And a lot of people do expect caskets these days, and there's a lot of different ways you could snipe caskets as some factions. Like, I imagine if you haven't seen a lot of caskets these days, it's because you're playing factions that have good tools against them.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume, maybe not. There are counterplay with caskets you could do, where you could kind of body block magic missiles and artillery, or you could use the caskets to kill the enemy artillery, because they can do that sometimes if it's not like overwhelming odds. But
Yeah, especially Empire artillery. If it's one-on-one, they can trade pretty well with it because the crews are relatively cowardly.
yeah. Yeah, even skull catapults with discourage too. And then Arkhan, Settra, just very common, and he doesn't have like a lot of abilities don't really suffer as much from the 15-second cast thing. Like you used to bring Khatep in matches where you cast a spell and then they had an item or a spell or something, an ability that they wanted to trigger that they couldn't trigger unless they got into melee for 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's not a lot of places where that really has effect anymore. Maybe Torox. If you use it on Torox, his brass body goes on cooldown for 15 seconds, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's really worth it because he'll get in melee and he'll be happy in melee for 15 seconds, and he doesn't normally use the brass body immediately. Like, you used to use it versus greenskins because they wouldn't get their WOG on the charge, which was really important. But yeah, I don't think it really has as much pertinence these days. It's just annoying and free-for-alls.
Oh god, in free-for-alls, I imagine it's actually pretty annoying to deal with.
Yeah, but then everyone tries to kill you. So it's not a great idea because everyone hates you for putting recharge on their spells. But it's still really fun.
Got it.
For you.
For you.
Listening to people moan. Very fun.
2 more questions, then some memes, then some Game 3 stuff, then we're done. Necro Sphinx versus Normal Sphinx. Real human being.
Necro Sphinx is just not as versatile as the War Sphinx. The kitty can double as anti-infantry and anti-large. Especially if it's on Settra, you can give Cursed Blades to give it anti-large, and it basically becomes a miniature Necro Sphinx. You can have support. It can also hold and let the missile do the anti-large work, like Sharpty Great Bows. A lot of times versus Chaos, I use it to charge infantry, then attack a large monster like a Shaggoth, and then the Great Bows shoot it. The Necro Sphinx is only good at anti-large. You have a lot of anti-large missiles already with Ushafti Great Bows, so you don't really need it to kill the large if you protect the Great Bows. And let's say the enemy just spams infantry, which is very common, and they use Burning Head and kill all your infantry. Your Necro Sphinx is gonna really be useless. Like it'll like die to a few Chaos Marauders with great weapons, or maybe it'll die to like 1 or 2. It might even die to 1 in a 1v1. I wouldn't be too surprised. But it's still not a bad unit sometimes. Like you can versus like factions like Norska that don't have a lot of missiles. It being able to kill monstrous infantry and large units really effectively can often free up your backline because they don't necessarily always try to compromise it with infantry units because they're relatively squishy and easy to burst down. So they need things like skin wolves or from here to try and get in the back line. You could always just use the Necro Sphinx to help kill the mammoth, kill the skin wolves. And then in the end game, their only missiles are generally skirmish cav, maybe a foot jav. But you in the end game, if you keep your carrion alive, if you're wise with the carrion, that might not be an issue. So yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. That was about it.
Pugnabone asks, when chariots, when Ushabti, when scorpions, when sphinxes? And what they mean by that is, what situations are they all useful in? So, like...
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think scorpions are really strong, let's say, like, with Arkhan the Black and 2 Necrotechs. Like, Arkhan the Black, 2 Necrotechs, double Tomb Scorpion. That is a very strong core combo in multiple matchups. Especially Bretonnia, for example. Like, versus Bretonnia, you see Fey Goon Squad, and Arkhan Goon Squad with double Necrotech, double Tomb Scorpion basically kills the whole Bretonnian army. If a Tomb Scorpion doesn't get isolated and gooned by Paladins or Gotrek. Because they can goon Fey, Paladin, Gotrek with the 2 Tomb Scorpions and 2 Necrotechs. And Arkhan, because they're all decent melee combatants. And you could use this combo versus Chaos as well if you need to. The only problem with it versus Chaos can sometimes be Archaon Fireball sniping Arkhan the Black down and you not having a way to body block the Fireball with something like a War Sphinx. But other than that, anything without strong missile presence is very strong versus Ushabti. Right now, somewhat struggle because they're somewhat outclassed by the 800 gold chariots. The Tomb King chariots for 800 gold are they can just basically kill a unit of chaff with 1 charge and move to the next, kill it with 1 charge. They just have a much higher damage DPS output, but the melee Ushabti are much better defensive support. Like you'd say you don't want to pay for Necropolis Knights, you just want a new melee Ushabti. They can be good at living a longer amount of time and allowing better support with Arkhan the Black Summon, where a chariot might start to get bogged down as soon as you lose infantry support and lose mobility advantage, to where the point is comes to the end game they become somewhat useless, where the melee Ushabti maintains some sort of relevance. And then, was that all the units, or was there something else in there?
Chariot, Ushabti, Sphinx, and Tomb Scorpions.
Oh, Sphinx. So the anti-infantry Sphinx, generally used to pin really large monsters, and block fireballs from hitting something like Arkhan the Black. Or if let's say you have a Lich Priest, block fireballs for your Lich Priest. Yeah. Oh, and I also bring the Arkhan the Black double Necrotechs. You bring them on foot 90% of the time for me because they can keep pace with the Tomb Scorpions and they can be harder to hit. Generally, is what I do. There is a chariot. You can take them on a chariot, but I don't take them on a chariot in some matchups, just because it's a lot of funds, and I like having it'll be like 3 to 4 units of skeletons that you could have if you have them on foot. Because the double Tomb Scorpion tends to be very stagnant, and the chariots tend to be very mobile, which can have advantages. But sometimes it means that they could get gooned easier on chariot. But like each chariot costs 350 gold, which is another skeleton. So, and if you're staying stagnant anyway with the Tomb Scorpions and you're not using the chariot mobility very much, even though the better stats, sometimes it's just not worth the chariot if you're not gonna make as much use as you can out of their melee prowess on the chariot. even though they're good on the Chariot.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's basically that. And the big war sphinxes, they're just keep them alive, charge infantry, make sure they just defend great bows. They're really good in combo with great bows. Like I bring war sphinxes, war sphinx versus lizardmen with great bows. They help kill Saurus, and then they help kill Bastillodons, Carnosaurs, chase things down, be a strong terror-causing unit in the end game, very strong animations, and can get out of bad situations better than something like a Tomb Scorpion and be more mobile or support a mobile kite build.
Got it. Got it.
Yep.
Which Tomb King's Lord is the hottest?
Settra.
Goddamn right. And he does fire damage, right?
Only if you use his item. What's it called? The Blessed Blade of Petra. That makes him imbue fire damage. He also always does fire damage on the Chariot of the Gods, but if he's not on the Chariot of the Gods, you need the Blessed Blade of Petra.
So that makes him by definition the hottest.
Exactly.
There you go. F&G asks, how do mummies wipe their butts? Probably just with their mummy wrappings.
Yeah, they're covered in toilet paper.
Oh god, Hazel brought the squeaky pig. Okay, I'm gonna mute in between questions. How fast do you fly on a Monday night?
On a Monday night? I'm very slow on Mondays because first day of the week basically, so I'm just gonna say 20
Got it.
miles per hour.
Who is the coolest person in Human Boy's Discord and why? Real human being.
Aristodamos.
Oh, why would you say that? No. You're gonna summon him.
I love his pings. He pings me all the time on all my Discords. I love it.
Good.
Thank you, Aristo. I love you.
Alright, game 3 and we'll close this shit out. What do you expect to be good or bad matchups versus game 3 factions based on what we expect each to play like? Jeremy.
Okay. I've looked at some of the early release stuff. So versus Khorne, they only have like the skull cannons, but they're so good in melee. They actually might be harder to beat than Chaos, considering it's like they get stronger as they lose stuff, right? And they're probably going to be very good at killing Tomb King's infantry and just bogging them down. They're like the ultimate rush faction that gets stronger the more damage you do to them at ranged, from what it sounds like, from what I've heard. So Khorne might be like really hard from the very, very limited things I've seen, and not having to play test things at all or knowing any unit interactions. Kislev, I have really no idea. They have like, they could be an empire, but I don't think they have armor-piercing missiles. But they do have monstrous units and some strong melee options, it seems. So they'll be better in melee than Empire, but worse ranged options, which could be bad, could also be good. I'm really, I think Kislev could go either way. You have a lot of tools. I think it'll depend a lot on Kislev mobility options and if they have any armor-piercing missiles. And then we know nothing about Slaanesh or Nurgle or Tzeentch yet. So I don't think I should cover them because you could say Nurgle's going to be slow, but they might be really hard to burst down. But maybe the slowness means on big maps you could kite them with great bows and have enough burst damage to kill them. But again, I don't want to say anything about those factions until we at least get some of the units for those factions.
Got it. And the big one, which Game 3 faction do you think Tomb Kings would match up against in a DLC? From Jeremy.
Well, it's got to be Nagash, right? A Nagash type DLC.
That would be pretty hype.
Yeah, because I think they're nowhere near the Chaos Dwarves. I don't think they have any interactions with Cathay. But I could maybe see something with Cathay, like the the Egyptian Empire trading with, ancient China. They could make a connection with Khemri and Cathay that way. Maybe they're big trade partners. Maybe they make something up there. Because, they might just make something up because they're making so much stuff up with Cathay. They might just make a Cathay Lord that has some sort of relevance with Tomb Kings. I could see that. Maybe you could see something with if they do like an ogre, like not an ogre kingdoms, Dogs of War. Maybe they are raiding Tomb Kings. I could see. Maybe the ogre tribes come down from the mountains and raid the lands of the dead. But I think it's got to be something like Nehekarra and Nagash or something.
Or hear me out. Skaven.
Skaven. Another Skaven DLC.
Dude, we need it. There's at least.
Well, it would be who? Wait, who's lefting out? I feel like I should know his name.
Screech Vermin King?
Thankful, right?
Oh, Thankful's bigger. Yeah, Thankful's bigger. But, dude, nah. Hear me out. Ska Bloodtail. Queek's left-hand man. Alright, you make him a legendary lord. He makes all Skaven slaves around him unbreakable. It'd be perfect.
Is there any lore with him attacking Tomb Kings?
Queek probably tells him to at some point. No, I got nothing. But I just want Ska in the game.
You just wanted an opportunity to say Skaven.
Of course. I love Skaven. All right, Taco. That was all the questions. You powered through it while even playing your finals.
Yes.
Anything you want to say to the lovely people?
Don't ping me.
Don't ping him. Got it. It's probably pretty simple. We want to plug your Twitch stream.
Oh yeah. You plug Flying Taco. I think it's just Flying Taco TW. So TW total works. Flying Taco was taken. And you can pig me. I was joking.
Okay.
I love you people. Well, I don't actually love you, but I respect you enough to say thanks.
Flying Taco TW, and it comes right up. 176 followers.
Oh yeah, we're big, even though I've literally only been playing Star Wars Battlefront this past month.
I see that. Why have you been playing Battlefront? What's that about? What's going on?
It's just a great game, and I had nostalgia into God and was playing the campaigns for some reason. I'll do more Warhammer soon. But I was doing some Battlefront. Great game.
Dude, alright, anybody who's here for Warhammer stuff, we finished. It's Battlefront time. Dude, Battlefront 1, in my opinion, was better. It's just
I have to agree, actually. They had better maps. I would say the Clone Wars era was not very balanced. Droids were very overtuned.
Droids were so much better than the Republic. It was nuts.
It was kind of nuts, but it was kind of fun because of that. But yeah, they were very overtuned. But it's the AI, so it doesn't matter too much. The AI, actually, the hard AI on Battlefront 1,
it was tough to beat.
Than the elite in Battlefront 2.
Yeah, dude, Battlefront 2, the hardest difficulty is a child's play. Let's say.
Barely made it out. Yeah, there's some hard missions that you might have to restart once on the campaign, but I think I played both campaigns in both all missions on Elite and on Hard in Battlefront 1. I think I restarted 1 to 2 in Battlefront 2 just because I was messing around doing something stupid, just trying to make different things work. And Battlefront 1, I restarted some levels 6 or 7 times. And I didn't win some games unless I got 170 kills out of the 250 that are possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that was hype.
Yeah. Vehicles are a little more broken in Battlefront 1, but it's kind of okay for the most part. No sprinting, but you can go prone. Better maps, in my opinion. Air to ground. No heroes, but infantry gameplay. Individual, no damage boost, damage reduction makes individual class on same class fairly balanced. Assault Trooper was very balanced. The Empire versus Rebellion was fairly balanced in terms of class on class, but sometimes the AI for rebels was sometimes a little better. Sometimes it was a little worse, but I think that one was fairly balanced, if I remember correctly.
There's a lot of great plans.
Yeah, it was mostly droids and Republic that wasn't as balanced.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I missed the ability to go prone, and I gotta okay. I've never talked to anyone besides my brother and a couple friends about this because like I wasn't in the internet when I was like 12 or whenever I powered through this game. But like, did you ever get the like upgraded sniper rifle that fires like a longer purple beam?
Oh, the award sniper rifle that's literally just worse than the normal
It's just
sniper.
worse, right?
You know, it's literally worse because if you have normal sniper rifle and you got to the point where you have an award, you're going to have damage boost already. So you're already going to one-shot people. The targeting for the award sniper rifle is definitely worse than the normal one. It's a little bit better hip fire in some ways because it's the projectile lasts a few seconds, so you can kind of miss but then hit them a little bit and then hit again. And it could be somewhat easier to aim from hip fire than the normal, somewhat, but it's still easy to aim than normal sniper hip fire. Yeah, it's just worse. It's like the only award gun that's actually objectively worse than the base. And you could make the same argument about the assault award. Like, it's really good, but normal assault with damage boost is basically just as good.
Yeah, burst fire is super good. I could talk about this with you all day, but Hazel apparently really wants to go outside, so I will let you go. But anybody who wants to check him out, go check him out on Twitch. We just showed you how to find him. Fun dude, as you have heard for the past, 2.5 hours.
It's been a long.
Yeah. You take care, dude.
All right, you too, man. Have a good one.
Boy. How do I end the live stream again? Oh, yeah, there we go.